10:04, and I'll call the Finance Committee meeting of Access Health CT to order. First, just a quick announcement. You'll see a notation that this meeting is being recorded for both note-taking purposes as well as for posting on Access Health CT's website afterwards. So the full proceedings will be available to those who choose to access it. And with that, I'll ask that the roll be taken. When your name is listed, please announce whether you are present for the roll.
Chair Claudio Galtieri.
Here.
Commissioner Manisha Tutani from DPH.
Here.
Thank you. Thomas McNeil, Matthew Brackman, and Commissioner Andrea Barton Reeves from DSS.
Here.
Thank you.
Claudio, you are muted, Claudio.
Yep. Thank you. This is Claudio again. Just another quick announcement for purposes of individuals who are trying to follow today's meeting and for note-taking purposes. I'll just ask that when participants speak, if they could just introduce themselves each time they speak, that would be really helpful. Thank you. And with that, I will turn it to public comment. My understanding is that no one has submitted or affirmatively told us in advance that they have public comment. I'll confirm with Marcin that to be the case, in which, great.
Yes,
in
Mr.
which
Chair.
Case, thank you. In which case we can move to agenda item number 3, which is a review and approval of our last meeting minutes from November 10th, 2022. I'm going to request a motion to approve those minutes.
Okay, so moved.
Thank you. Moved by Commissioner Barton Reeves. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Jutani. The motion is properly moved and seconded. Any discussion or review of the minutes? Seeing none, I'll ask that a roll call be taken to approve the November 10th minutes.
Claudio Galtieri.
Yes.
Matthew Brackman, Thomas McNeil, Andrea Barton Reeves,
Yes.
and Manisha Tutani.
Yes.
Thank you.
This is Claudio again, and now we move on to agenda item number 4. And for this, I'll turn it over to James for overview and then passing off for a presentation on our third quarter budget report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. I'm James Michel, the Chief Executive Officer for Access Health Connecticut, but also now I'm also the interim head of finance for Access Health. I'll cover a quick update. Then again, before I pass it off to Sinisha Kenkovich, who head of financial planning and analysis, who will give an update on where we are with our third quarter budget. As you all know, Dal Jones, our former director of finance, left us last month, and we started recruiting for his replacement immediately. We had over 20 applicants, and we've interviewed the top 3 candidates, and we are in the process of selecting one of them to be our next director of finance. So more to come on that within the next week or so. So we're very pleased with the quality of the candidates that applied for the role. Today, Sinisha will present the third quarter budget results, as well as our projections for the remainder of the fiscal year, which ends on June 30th. As part of that presentation, we are recommending and asking the Finance Committee to increase our budget by $2.7 million. This increase will cover the marketing and outreach to support Medicaid unwinding. We have continued to coordinate our work with DSS and the Office of Health Strategies to ensure we are all maximizing our efforts without overlapping each other's work. More to come on that. We continue to work on the proposed 2024 operating budget, which will be presented to this committee in June at a special meeting. We'll work with the chair of the committee to get a date, then we will get back to the entire committee with the right date before the next board meeting, which at this point we are proposing will be on June 22nd, more than likely June 15th. maybe the date, but we will talk. We'll work with Claudio to make sure that date works for him and for the committee before we finalize anything. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my very brief overview of where we are. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
This is Claudio again. Any questions from committee members? Thank you, James. Seeing none, we'll move on to Sunissa's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sunisha Tsurangovich, Head of Financial Planning and Analysis at Access Health CT. I will briefly talk about the fiscal year 2023 budget. I'll start off with the budget versus actuals through the first 3 quarters. And Martin, if you could go to the next slide, please. So through first 3 quarters, we are $609,000 under budget, and this is mainly due to timing. And on the next slide, we'll look into that in a little bit more detail. So through March 31st, we have received an additional grant. Therefore, we have that increased our grants income, as well as the interest rate has increased since our last presentation. Therefore, we have received additional income from the interest on our reserve funds. On the expense side, the variants are mainly due to timing. Are there any questions on this slide?
I just want to add that at a very when the fiscal year ended, then we'll have a better perspective on what the gaps are. I mean, what the delta is. By this point, we're projecting that we're going to be on budget. We're going to be on budget and maybe a little bit under budget. So hopefully we'll be able to add some money back to the reserves.
Thank you, James. Okay, go ahead. There's a question.
Yeah, I was
Yes.
wondering, yes, thank you. I was wondering, could I get some clarity as to what variances due to timing means exactly?
What that means usually it's various projects. We might have budgeted them to start, in the first 3 quarters, but they might have been, or in the first quarter, let's say, for example, but they started in the second quarter. So because of that, some of that work has been pushed further out in the fiscal year, as an example.
All right.
And also, again, some of the timing for fringe benefits. We know, even though we haven't spent the money yet, the money hasn't gone out the door yet, but we know we've actually spent the money. We just haven't paid the bills yet. So when we pay the bills, that number comes out. So the timing is actually cash leaving us. And sometimes the project, as Sunisha indicated, even though we budgeted for it to start now, but it actually hasn't started yet. So we haven't started spending the money yet. So we believe by year end, we would have spent the money, if not all of it, certainly some of it.
Okay, so it's not due with respect to salary and fringe. Those aren't variances with respect to timing due to vacancies. It's because when the report was prepared, those expenses hadn't yet been paid.
Hadn't hit our books yet,
Okay.
but there will be some savings from salaries. So we believe by year end, there will be some savings because we do have some vacancies and some turnover. That's going to help us out a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is Claudio. I just want to follow up on the Commissioner Barton-Reeves question. And just last time we had spoke, James, I think that you had talked through some really belt tightening efforts that Access Health had taken. One of those was about not having repeat mailers sort of on the same day and cutting down some of the mailing costs. And the second, I think, being a strategic decision that you guys made to rely less on contract staff and bring some people in-house, and that you thought that there was a return on investment for that, for both having a loyalty base and a stability in your workforce, but also actually efficiencies. how are those savings manifesting themselves in this chart? Can you help point out sort of where those real tangible cuts and efficiencies are starting to appear on our actuals?
So the savings with respect with last mailing, what we did was we upgraded our system so that instead of sending out 5 different letters to the same person and 5 different envelopes, now we package them all together into one envelope. So that saves us envelope and also postage costs. So that's in the contractual line, right? And then you see the savings in the other savings also in the contractual is where we have contract with vendors that supplies us temporary staff, and some of the work we bring in-house is going to save us more. It's going to save us money, but the real benefit to us is the efficiency we gain by having our own permanent staff doing the work, especially in the areas of outreach, so that we don't have to go out and recruit whenever we need a campaign, like we would have had to do now for Medicaid Unwind. So that's one area where we are saving because of those 2 strategic initiatives that we have initiated last year. And also you'll see more of that in the proposed 2024 budget as well.
Okay. Thank you. And it looks like, given the significant underspend, at least compared to what we had budgeted and projected in contractual line item, that those savings are doing exactly what we anticipated. We're hitting our marks there.
Yes,
Thank
we
you.
are. Unless there are any other questions, we can move on to the next slide. Thank you. So this slide is the proposed fiscal year 2023 final budget, and this is for the full year budget. And as you can see on this, we are asking the committee to approve an increase of $2.7 million on the Access Health side to fund the Medicaid Unwind. And I will talk about that in a little bit more detail on the next slide. So this is basically the details of the prior slide. I mentioned earlier we received additional grant funding. Then you'll see there's a increase of 2.7 million from the reserve funding. So we're looking to take out another $2.7 million out of reserve to fund the Medicaid Unwind. The interest rate increase has helped us to decrease the other revenue line, as well as the grants and the rebate revenues. So those kind of helped us reduce that from 861,000 to 611. And we continue looking for grants and other sources of revenue. However, that other revenue line most likely will get funded out of reserves, whatever up to that amount. On the expense side, Claudia mentioned earlier, there will be some vacancy savings because over time, sometimes when people leave, by the time you hire the next person, there's always a little gap. So there'll be some savings. On a temporary staffing line, we're actually added additional resources there to help us with IRS and CMS changes to compliance requirements. And you'll see the contractual line is decreasing, but we're adding, and that's where the additional funding as well is coming that's where the additional spend for marketing outreach is going to be as well. We split it out so it's a little bit clear on that end. On the equipment and maintenance, there's an increase due to the enterprise operating model vendor transition costs, which started late last fiscal year.
So, Nisha, very quickly, with the Medicaid Unwind, what we're asking, that's a cap for us. So to spend up to that amount, right? Obviously, but if we don't need to spend that much, we're not going to spend it. But it's up to that amount. And for two areas, marketing is the biggest, is the lion's share of that cost, and the other one is outreach, where we're going to be in person. And I think we've presented it to the board and also other committees as well. Our strategy for doing marketing and outreach to support Medicaid Unwind for the next 12 months. The temporary staff to assist us with IRS. The IRS and CMS come in every 3 years to do an audit, and they're coming in this year. So we had to hire some very technical skills to help us prepare for the CMS and IRS audit, and that accounts for the lion's share of the increase in temporary staffing. And again, we have enough resources within the budget to absorb those increases because of the savings that we have achieved for Claudia, for what you mentioned earlier today. Also, the other one's the EOM. I think Commissioner Reeves is fully engaged in this process along with us and other players. Right now, the state is transitioning from Deloitte to another vendor. And because of that, there's an overlapping of the transition that has cost us more money. And we have to put more money in the budget to support that effort. And so right now we're paying for two vendors. We're paying for Deloitte and for Emphasis as we transition from Deloitte to Emphasis. The training, the overlapping that's going on right now.
Are there any questions? Okay. Martin, we can move on to the next slide. And this is the last slide of the operating budget presentation. The fiscal 2023 projected reserve fund balance. We started off with $23.5 million at the beginning of the fiscal year, and we're projecting to be at 19.2 at the end of this fiscal year. And the 19.2 million represents 6.8 months of operating funding. So we're going from 8.4 to 6.8 with all the after all the adjustments.
Just one quick comment. I think we're still in a very good financial position. Most quasis would be if they had 6 months. The benchmark historically, if you have 6 months of operating reserves, you are in pretty good shape. So we think we're still in a very strong financial position with the 6.8. And maybe when the year is over, at the end of the fiscal year, if we have a little bit more, if we have more of a surplus, it may be at 7 months. But we won't know that until we close our books after the fiscal year ends on June 30th. So sometime around July and August, we'll have a better idea. But right now, we're projecting it conservatively. We're going to be at 6.8 a month, which is a very strong position to be in. But we'd much rather be at 8.4. But 6.8 is still very strong. And we are concerned that we start eating into our reserves. If we continue to do that, then that will definitely start to impact us. Good thing for us, we're not doing any reporting to any external agency, meaning Moody's and S&P, and we don't have any bonds that we have to worry about. So this is just for our own comfort level and the board's comfort level, that if something were to happen, that we have enough reserves to absorb any shock to the organization, financial shock to the organization. Whether if our system blew up, whether the state passed a law saying that we have to do something, we want to sure we have resources to execute what we have to do on an emergency basis or as quickly as possible. But we are in pretty good financial position. Again, that $19 million is unaudited. It's our projected numbers, but I think we're going to be there or a little bit better than that.
And next slide, we'll talk a little bit about, just give an update on the grants. So in fiscal year 2023, Access Health has applied for 11 grants, and 3 have been awarded, and 2 additional grants are pending award. And all of those grants awarded were to fund the Broker Academy. And you see the list here on the slide.
So as a result of these grants, the Broker Academy, I don't think has cost Access Health anything at all. It's been funded mostly out of grants, but again, there's some cost to us, meaning our staff time is absorbed by Access Health, but all the training that we do, the paying for the licensing, paying for the exams, laptops, all of that has been funded by grants, as opposed to money coming out of our budget.
James, this is Claudio. Can you tell us to what extent at all, maybe potentially the Broker Academy and the people going through the Broker Academy could help us achieve some of our goals in the unwinding, and how they could be a force to maybe meet people in the community, connect them to qualified health plans? And how do you see that being part of the strategy and intersecting with our 12-month unwind period?
So the in-person outreach that we're going to do in very targeted strategic locations based on the volume of people coming on a month-by-month basis, we will utilize our newly minted brokers from the Broker Academy to be present, to be able to engage and connect, and also answer questions and guide the members of the unwinding population into picking the right plan. So this is the timing couldn't be better for us in terms of having people who from this community, so Bridgeport, New Haven, Hartford, other communities, to be part of the process, so it could connect with this population and help them pick the right plan. So this has been the timing has been good for us. And again, when we have the outreach, in-person outreach, they're the ones who's going to staff the events that we're going to have in very targeted communities.
Very good. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, we have 2 votes, I believe.
Yes, this is Claudio again. So the first of our 2 votes will be motion to approve the FY 2023 third quarter budget as presented by the exchange staff, the third quarter budget report. Do I have a motion for that vote?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Barton Reeves. Second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Giuttani. Any discussion before we announce a roll call? Seeing none, we'll take a roll on that motion, Martian.
Claudio Gualtieri,
Yes?
Matthew Brackman, Thomas McNeil, Andrea Barton Reeves,
Yes.
Manisha Giuttani.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. So then our second vote, and as you saw as part of the presentation, the anticipation and request here of the committee is to recommend moving 2.7 million, transferring those funds from the reserves into an account to be able to support the unwinding, the Medicaid unwinding. So I will entertain a motion to approve a transfer of 2.7 million from reserves to support the Medicaid unwinding.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Giuttani,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Barton Reeves. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, can I just interrupt for just a second? Do we also need to vote on subtracting the fiscal year 2023 CIP, or just the marketing and outreach for Medicaid unwind?
I don't understand your question, Cindy.
Mr. Michel, so we're just voting for on using the reserve for $2.7 million. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Again, up to $2.7 million.
Up to, okay. So the motion was made by Commissioner Tutani and seconded by Commissioner Burton Reeves. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Nope. We'll have a roll call on that motion then.
Thank you. Claudio Gualtieri,
Yes?
Matthew Brackman, Thomas McNeil, Andrea Burton Reeves,
Yes.
and Manisha Tutani.
Yes.
Thank you. And I think we only have a vote to adjourn.
Yep, so I
Mr.
can,
Chair.
I'll request a motion then. This is Claudio requesting a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
The motion is moved.
Second.
Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Jutani. All right, all those in favor of adjournment, signal by
Mr.
saying
Chair,
aye.
I'm
We
sorry,
need to
sorry
roll
for
call it?
interrupting. Roll call
Okay,
once
yeah,
again,
okay,
Mr.
we'll
Chair.
roll call the adjournment.
Claudio Gualtieri,
Yes.
Matthew Brackman, Thomas McNeil, Andrea Burton Reeves,
Yes.
and Manisha Tutani.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good
Thank you
day.
very much. All have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.